Okay, welcome to our video presentation today regarding the Illinois FirstNet project. My name is Bill Springer and I work for the Illinois Terrorism Task Force, and I'm the system architect for the state of Illinois on the FirstNet project. What we'd like to do today is talk to you a little bit about what FirstNet is and what it isn't, what FirstNet can do, and kind of catch you up on the progress of the project in Illinois. A little bit about my background. I used to work for the Illinois Tollway for 33 years. I was in charge of all of the voice communication systems, towers, radios, and telephones, and things like that. So let's talk about FirstNet in Illinois. One of the things that we have in public safety today is public safety is a very data-driven field. There's a lot of data that we use today. We do a lot with running license plates, running driver's licenses, and things like that. The use of wireless broadband has really exploded in the last 5 or 10 years, not only in the public, but with the public safety. And the trend is only going to accelerate. We keep using more and more data every year because we're doing more and more things in public safety that are data-driven. As an example, there was a study done that shows that cellular data traffic doubles every year worldwide, and that's been consistent for the last several years. It's not because more and more people are getting on the cellular networks, it's because they're doing more and more things with that data. Also, worldwide, the data traffic over cellular networks is at 43 petabytes per month. So if we kind of look at a visualization of this, this is St. Peter's Square at the Vatican back in 2005 for Pope Benedict's debut. Now, if you look, it's mainly a picture just of the backs of people's heads, except down here in the right-hand corner, there's a single flip phone. And they're doing whatever it is they're doing, probably taking photographs of the scene. If we fast forward to 2013, you'll see that everybody now has a device. You can see the screen is filled with all the little lights, and it's tablets, smartphones, all sorts of devices. Public safety is really no different. Every public safety person has a device. They either have one that's been issued by their agency, or they use their personal device for data. In the past, when we've had public safety data systems, we've really had only two choices: the private data networks and the public ones. The private data systems are things like, if you've heard of the term alerts or IPSAN, those are private data systems in the state of Illinois, usually put in by county or by city. Those are based on two-way radio voice technology. They have low bandwidth and low speed. So if you're going to do license plate entry or driver's licenses, you enter the information in text and you send it in and you get your response back. It's fine for text information, but the private networks don't handle any larger types of bandwidth like photographs or plans or even video. One of the nice things about the public safety or the private data systems is there's practically zero congestion. The number of users on a private data system is tightly controlled, and it's designed so that as you're using the system, you're not going to run into contention and congestion on the network. Those private data systems are also built to high availability and high reliability. They're designed to operate when things are going really bad in public safety. One of the things about public safety communications is when everything's going bad and the whole world has gone up for grabs and nothing else is working, that's when we need to communicate the most. So we need those high availability and high reliability systems. The other drawback to the private data systems is the limited coverage. They're usually built for a specific city or a specific county or a specific state. If you leave that coverage area, your data device is no longer any good because it can't access the network because it's out of range. If we compare that to the commercial cellular data networks, those are high bandwidth and high speed. You can do a lot more than just text entry now. You can do photographs, you can do building plans, you can send maps, you can send all sorts of high bandwidth information. You can even send video over those cellular data networks. So you've got a lot of capacity to send a lot of data. However, commercial cellular networks suffer from normal and emergency congestion. The networks have got a lot of users on them. The good news is that the cellular providers have done a good job of getting a lot of customers on their networks. The bad thing is they have a lot of customers on the networks. So the data throughput on those networks gets slowed down in congested times. They have low to moderate availability and reliability. If you've ever been in a public safety situation after a tornado or some sort of storm or some sort of disaster, one of the first things that starts to have a problem is the cellular networks. So they have a low to moderate availability for public safety purposes. However, another big benefit to these commercial networks is they have nationwide coverage. You can have your device, I've got one from Verizon, for example. You can take your device, use it here in Illinois, you can go to California or New York or wherever you go, and that network will still work. So what FirstNet is, the vision of FirstNet, is a nationwide public safety broadband network that's dedicated to public safety. And the vision is to give us the best of both worlds. The private networks with their controlled number of users and the low congestion and the high reliability, we're going to mate that up with the public networks where you've got the high capacity, the high bandwidth, and the nationwide coverage. Again, it's to give public safety responders the best of both worlds in their data networks. So let's talk about the nationwide public safety broadband network, which is otherwise known as FirstNet. FirstNet, like we said before, is dedicated to public safety. It gives us capacity, coverage, and reliability. And notice that capacity is underlined here. Capacity is really a big deal on this network because it's capacity that really helps us out in public safety. FirstNet will bring us capacity that we can use where we're not competing with other users for the bandwidth on that network. So capacity is one of the big deals of FirstNet. It allows us to run public safety apps and data. It also uses LTE or 4G technology, and we'll talk about that technology in a later slide. It's considered interoperable. You can use any device anywhere. So if you're on the FirstNet network, you can have a device from any manufacturer, whether it's Samsung or Motorola or whoever, or Apple, and you can use that and communicate with any other device. One of the things FirstNet is not, is it's not a replacement for land mobile radio. There are a lot of technical reasons why we can't use FirstNet at this point as a replacement for land mobile radio. One of the things that occurred early on in FirstNet when they first came out was they were saying that we could replace our two-way radios with the FirstNet network. As you'll see from a later slide, that's not going to be possible for quite some time. FirstNet's going to be a build, own, operate model. And what will happen is eventually FirstNet's going to issue an RFP for a nationwide network services provider. Once that vendor is in place, they'll build out the network across the country, and then public safety will pay as you go, very similar to the way you do today with your cellular services. You'll have a certain number of devices, a certain number of counts, and probably pay a monthly bill for each one of those. The intent is that the network is financially self-supporting and financially self-sufficient. FirstNet will also have strong governance, and this does a couple of things for us. It ensures fair use of the system by all users. There will be rules of use to make sure that no one agency can hog up all the bandwidth, making it unusable for other users. Also, it's a united voice in dealing with the vendor. If you've ever dealt with a nationwide vendor, you know sometimes it's kind of hard to get their attention. Having a governance system allows you to speak with a much bigger voice than you'd have as a standalone agency. FirstNet was enabled by the Middle Class Tax Relief and Job Creation Act of 2012, and this was in response to the 9/11 Commission report that pointed out a lot of shortcomings in public safety communications. There's also funding for this network. There's been $135 million in state implementation and planning grants that have been awarded to all the states. There's also $7 billion set aside for deployment and operation of the network. Now, if you think about it, $7 billion is not enough to build a nationwide network. There just simply is not enough funding in there. However, what $7 billion does do is it gets the network built up enough to start getting paying customers on the network. Then we can take that revenue and plow it back into the system and keep building the network out from there. So think of the $7 billion as seed money to get FirstNet going. We also have spectrum. The government allocated D block at 700 megahertz to public safety. Where the term D block comes from is, if you remember back to when we had all the old UHF TV channels, like channel 69, channel 73, and 81, and so on and so forth, those were taken from the broadcasters, chopped up into blocks, and issued out to different people like the carriers. There was an A block and a B block. Well, D block went to public safety. What D block gives us is a dedicated 20 megahertz to public safety. That's a lot of spectrum. There's an awful lot of room to operate, and there's a lot of things we can do with that amount of spectrum as far as public safety and the services we can offer public safety. This is the timeline on the national level, and it pretty well follows what we're doing here in Illinois. You can see our yellow dot where we are here. We're still in the outreach and education phase. And this, what we're doing today, is going out and talking about FirstNet, explaining to people what it is and what FirstNet's all about. As you can see, before we have an operational network, we have to go through a lot of steps. We've got to go through data collection to understand what the users are doing and what they need the FirstNet network for. We've got to go through a network design before we can have a rollout and finally have an operational network. You'll notice in the middle there's a block there that says opt-in or opt-out. The way the law is written for FirstNet is that each state can make a decision whether they want to opt in, and that is to use the network as provided by FirstNet and their vendor, or a state has the option to opt out. where they can build their own network to their own design, but it has to match the national network standards of FirstNet. What opt-out does, though, it means that the states have to have money up front to be able to build their infrastructure out to have a network. Opt-in simply uses what we get from FirstNet, and we pay the monthly fees as they put out those fees to see what those are. This chart here is just a representation of FirstNet's ideas as to what the steps we have to go through to get to the opt-in and opt-out decision. The important takeaway from this chart is that we're still at the very beginning of this process. We have a long way to go before we can reach the opt-in, opt-out decision.